What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and this is my review of the Nikon D5200 DSLR. It comes to you from Nikon as part of their D5000 series of cameras, and it's aimed at the advanced beginner photographer. Now, if you want some background information about the specs of this camera, I've done a spec comparison of this versus the popular D3200, so you can check that out right here. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be switching to filming with the D5200 for the rest of this review, so you can get a better idea of the video, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Anyway, do hit that thumbs up button and let's get straight into the review. So now we're filming with the Nikon D5200, and this will hopefully give you a better idea of the video quality, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. To begin with, resolution 24.1 megapixel CMOS sensor with X-Speed 3. Now that's obviously a huge resolution, very useful, masses of detail, and it's higher than most of the full frame DSLRs out there right now as well. Considering that this is an entry level DSLR, it's absolutely amazing. You've got a huge amount of detail. As I always mention, a camera is only as good as the lens that you use, so I would definitely recommend getting a nice prime lens to go with this camera. And accompanied with the right lens, you're going to be getting some great, nice, sharp and clear images. And also, because of the large resolution, you're also going to have the option of cropping into a lot of images and creating new compositions with the same image because of that massive resolution. Now, what does this mean in terms of file sizes? A raw file will be roughly 25 to 30 megabytes, and on an 8 gig card, you're looking at roughly 250 raw full resolution images, which is pretty good. And in terms of JPEG, 10 to 12 megabytes per image. Now, you've only got the single SD card slot, so I would advise getting a few large SD cards, about 16 to 32 gig. High-speed SD cards would be recommended, and these days they're really cheap, so I mean, no excuses there. Autofocus, you've got a 39-point AF system with 9 cross-type sensors as well. Now it works really well, and it's a big update from the traditional 11 in the D5000 series. You've got 39 autofocus points, which are really good, and very sharp, very quick as well. I think that's one big advantage on Nikon cameras. I love the autofocus, even on the entry level models, very quick and accurate. And it does not have a built-in focus motor. That's something that a lot of people have been mentioning in the comments of my previous video, but to be honest, personally, not a big deal for me, because this is something that in most of the lenses out there do have a built-in focus motor, so you don't really have to worry about it being inbuilt into the DSLR. So not a huge deal there. In terms of the ISO sensitivity and low light performance, you've got 100 to 6400, extendable to 25,600, and let's have a look at this in practice. Looking at the ISO in practice, here's an image in low light, and we're at ISO 800. It seems to be managing it pretty well. ISO 1600, again, it seems to be managing it okay. And when we get to 3200, decent image, but we can start seeing some noise in the background, especially in the darker areas. When we pump it up to 6400, then obviously we can definitely see a lot more noise in the background. Now this is extendable above the native 6400, so high 0.3, high 0.7, high 1 and high 2. Now obviously coming towards the higher levels, the extendable ISO levels, you're getting a lot of noise in the background. I personally wouldn't advise going any more than 6400. I would say try to aim to not go higher than 3200 on this camera. If you are going to be needing more light, then I'd advise getting something like a flash gun or a speed light, something that's going to compensate for that low light. The body and layout of the D5200 very similar to the D5100. Everything's quite accessible. I do like it. The live view switches at the top, as with the D5100. You've also got the zoom buttons on the right hand side, which is really useful. When I'm shooting video, I like to zoom into the subject in live view, focus in, and then hit the record button. And this you can all do on the D5200 without taking your hands out of the shooting position, which is very useful. A lot of other cameras have the zoom buttons on the left hand side, which I find really annoying because I have to take my hand away from the focus ring to be able to zoom in, to focus in. So I don't really like that too much. So I think that's a big advantage on the D5200. Talking about the screen, obviously a big advantage on the D5200 D5200 is the swivel out screen, swivel and tilt screen that you've got on there. It's a 3-inch 921K dot vari-angle LCD screen, and very, very useful. Obviously a big selling point on this camera, as with the other D5000 cameras that you've got. Very useful in video as well, because if you've got maybe some awkward low angles or anything that you need to go for, then this is going to allow you to do that, because you can still see what you're going to be recording. I've been in situations where I've had to really like kind of literally be sleeping on the floor to try to get some nice angles, and you don't have to do that with the D5200. You can just use the screen and utilize that tilt and swivel screen, so a big advantage there. The user interface is something I cannot ignore. It's an improved graphic user interface, and I absolutely love this about the entry-level Nikon cameras out there. It's absolutely awesome, because you've got graphical representation of a few things that are happening on the camera. For instance, if you change the aperture, the graphic interface will show you what's happening to the lens when you change the aperture. Very, very useful for beginners. And the D5200 has shutter speed, aperture and ISO in 3 rings that are displayed on the LCD monitor. Very, very useful there, and I think that's a big advantage on especially for beginners out there. If you're a beginner, that's going to be a really big advantage to you to learn a bit more about what's happening inside the camera. Continue shooting. You've obviously got 5 frames a second. That's one more than the D5100, which had 4 frames a second. And this is obviously really useful for sports photography and fast-moving subjects, etc. 5 frames a second is pretty impressive for an entry-level DSLR. Talking about video, obviously now you've had a bit of a preview of what this records at, and you can record 1080p at 24, 25 and 30 frames a second, and 1080i at 50 and 60 frames a second, so that's interlaced and not progressive. In terms of max recording length, you've got 20 minutes, as with most other DSLRs out there now, and you've got full manual control over video, unlike the D5100. The D5100, a lot of people were complaining about the fact that you could not fully control the camera manually in video mode, but you do have a full manual control, as with the D3200. So Nikon have obviously taken the feedback on board and sorted this out on the D5200, so you can really get some nice professional looking videos. In practice, the 1080i is actually not too bad. I was actually quite impressed with the quality of it. However, the bigger disadvantage here is that it crops in to the image that you're seeing, which is slightly weird. So in 1080i, it slightly crops in. Now, considering that this is a 2/3 sensor as it is, say for instance you're using a 50mm lens, that's going to be the equivalent of a 75mm anyway. Now if you're cropping in even further, then you're getting even tighter to the subject, so that's a big disadvantage. I'm not sure if this can be changed via an update or something, but with 1080i it does crop in even more to your image. One thing that you can't do is change the aperture in live view. Now this is something consistent across a lot of the Nikon DSLRs out there, that when you're in live view you can't change the aperture. Not a huge deal, because you can always switch live view off and change the aperture, so it just adds one more step to your kind of process. Not a huge deal, but obviously if they could, if Nikon could sort this out with a firmware update or something, that would be really, really useful. In terms of the audio recording, you've got the onboard stereo mic, which is very improved now and is actually really, really good. And you've got audio controls as well as the indicators, which is again very, very useful. And you've even got the external audio mic input as well. Let's do a quick test. Okay, so right now we're filming with the Nikon D5200 onboard stereo mic, and this is the sort of quality that you can expect with the onboard stereo mic. We now have the Rode Video Mic Pro plugged in to the D5200, and this is the sort of sound quality that you can expect. Now I'm not sure if you can notice, but there's a lot of hiss in the background. Now I've had the same problem with other Nikon DSLRs. By plugging in a Rode Video mic, it just has a lot of background hiss. Now I've not had a chance to try out any other mics other than Rode Video mics, but I'm not sure why this is. I don't know if it's a problem on Rode side or if it's a problem on Nikon side, but it's very, very annoying. I mean, I've tried the same video mics on Canon cameras and they produce actually very, very nice quality audio. So again, I'm not sure why this is, but this is the sort of quality that you can expect with a Rode Video mic. However, as I've mentioned previously as well, it's usually best with the DSLR to use an external recording device altogether if you're going to be shooting professional video. I personally choose the Zoom H4n, which shoots absolutely awesome audio, so I would advise something like that anyway. Using the D5200 wirelessly, you've got the WU1A adapter. Now this is very useful for transferring your images wirelessly onto a mobile device, whether that be a phone or a tablet. Obviously if you're out and about on the move, it's really useful to transfer these images on. You can get them online straight away, send them to a client, etc. Really useful. The remote controls aren't exceptional, but again, another useful feature there as well. And the W1A is only about 50 or 60 pounds here in the UK, not very expensive. So if you do want it, you can get that additional little unit and just plug that in, and you can see an unboxing of it here if you do want to have a bit more of a look at what you get in the box. In-camera effects. Now personally, I'm not a huge fan of in-camera effects. I prefer taking the images onto a computer and having much more flexibility and control with raw files, so that's my personal preference. But as with the D5100, the D5200 does come with certain in-camera effects, in-camera HDR mode, you've got selective color sketch. Now again, these sort of features for a professional, I would, if you're going to that stage, I would actually advise getting onto something like Photoshop or Lightroom and playing around with things in there. You're going to have much more control, much more flexibility, and it's going to really improve your results than what's going to actually happen in camera. To summarize, I think the D5200 is a great camera both for photography and video, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone out there, beginners as well. And if you're even a beginner trying to go on a step further, it's again a really good camera to use. I think the price is slightly a bit too high right now compared to something like the D3200, which is an absolutely great camera as well. So if you are thinking about going for the D5200, maybe wait a few months until the demands slightly died down, so you can pick it up at a better price. So that was my review of the Nikon D5200. What are your views on it? Drop me a comment below and do let me know. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to the channel? I've got plenty more videos coming up on here. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV, and I'll see you next time.